tonight is about auctions. Has anybody bought at auction? Give us a high five, no? Would you like to buy at auction and know what to look out for? Yeah? Some good deals at auction, but you really need to know what you're looking for. So yeah, welcome to Debbie Does Property and her amazing dream team. So we've got Wayne from DMI Finance, we've got Lee Gilder from Cook Law, we've got Rob Harrison, Defects. So we've got a great lineup for you tonight, so I think we'll just get started. So we're going to look at auctions from an investor, that's us lot. Then we've got Lee as our solicitor legals, we've got Wayne as our finance guy, and we've got Rob as our defects specialist. So for me, when I'm looking at auctions, first of all, we need to make sure it's going to fit our strategy. So that is a strategy or area, the numbers, because there could be some hidden costs within the numbers. So let's say it's a flat, you know, you've got service charges, you've got ground rent. So we really need to see what figures are in there to make sure it gives us our ROI or our yield or whatever it is that you're looking for, that true cash flow. So that's that. So there is sometimes hidden costs there. So with a legal pack, the three things that I like to look at, which is special conditions, that's the main one. And then I usually leave the title and the searches to our solicitor, but also they will look at over the special conditions. So some of the stuff that we have found in the special conditions can be stuff like clauses in there. So let's say you're buying a plot of land, and there may be clauses in there to say once you've bought it and built on it, that you have to give an uplift back to the original seller. You've got things like changes on completions times. So it may be the fact that you've went through the auction pack and the day before the auction that they've put in there a completion date that they've changed from 56 days to 14 days. So the special conditions are really really important, and that can really scoop at the deal. There's going to be lots more that Lee's going to be chatting about. There's also things like if you're buying a property to rent out as a buy-to-let, there might be rules on there that actually you can't rent that property out as a buy-to-let, you can only do it as residential. So there's lots and lots of stuff in the special conditions that we need to look at, and that's something that I look at first. And usually when we look at a legal pack as investors, we will look at it and go, do you know what it is? Let's look through why we shouldn't buy the property. What is going to stand out to us that we shouldn't buy that property? Because you've got things like sums of money that they put in figures and not numbers, so it all blurbs in with the actual if you're anything like me reading documents, you're not going to be very good. So the numbers they're doing letters, and then that all blurbs in with the rest of the contract, the rest of the writing. Sometimes the writing be really small, it'll be messy. They do all sorts of tricks in the bag in auctions, but I have gotten some really good deals there, to be fair. So it's really key to have a good power team. So not every solicitor or finance specialist can move quick or will move quick. So you need to make sure somebody who is they've done lots and lots of auctions, which Lee and Wayne have done lots and lots of auctions. There's two types of auctions. You've got your modern method auction, which actually I was speaking to Lee, it's more like a normal sale, but it's got time constraints in there, so you must complete on a certain time, but at least you've got time to do your due diligence, you've got time to do your searches. There's much more time in there, where when you look at the traditional auction, that's your exchange straight away. So the hammer goes down, you have exchange on that property and you have to buy that property. So that's why you've got a lot of work to do before that, and make sure that the legal packs that your solicitor has actually read the legal pack. So there's some of the things that I look at as an investor. And once you register, so if you're online and you register to buy a property or register for a property online, that means that you've done your due diligence and you've looked at everything, and that may be sort of a contract. So if you look at Pattinson's and you've ever dealt with Pattinson's for auctions, they can't wait for you to register online, get your bid online, just do it online. No, you need to make sure that it's definitely a deal that you want to go for, because if you registered for that property, this is in my experience, by the way, if you registered for that property thinking, oh, I put this amount down, not got your finance or anything in place, it goes to auction, it didn't go for the price they wanted it to, yours was the nearest offer, then they come back
Oh.
to you and go, guess what? You're buying a property. So you have to be very, very, very careful when you're registering for properties or anything like that. Always make sure you've got everything lined up and that you know what you're doing. Because for me, I feel like sometimes auction houses, I feel like sometimes they don't tell with everything. I'm not saying they don't tell the truth, but they just keep things in, which we have to be a little bit of a detective and they ask the questions and just try to get things out of them and put everything in an email. So I think that's from an investor's point of view, I think really that's it. And I would just check it with, look at the special conditions, see what's in there. There can be all sorts of horrors in there. And then just pass that then. So if there was anything in there that I wasn't happy with, I'll probably just go in there and go, Lee, do you know what it is? I don't think I'm going to buy this property. Look at this. And they may go, yeah, you're right. Don't even go any further with a pack. So this can cost, so your auction packs to get looked at properly can cost anything from 300, 400, 500 pound, depending on the deal. So can you imagine if your strategy is buying at auction, then you've literally got to pay for that pack each time. Tonight we're going to give you the educate you on how to look at a legal pack for to say no, I'm not going for it, or actually I'll just let Lee have a glimpse over it, not read the full pack just to see whether it's a go or not. Also, up to 30% of and people buying property at auction do not even download the legal pack. Honestly, they don't even download the legal pack. That is just absolutely horrendous. I mean, why wouldn't you look at a legal pack when you're buying a property? So I've took this off somebody else, but what he said was um, they think it's click and collect at Argos, not at auctions. When they look at an auction pack, they feel like they're going with a little trolley and just popping a property in and shopping at Argos. So yeah, so there's lots to look out for, and a lot of investors don't look at legal packs for some reason. There was a guy, a lovely guy actually from London, who bought a property at auction. He paid 60,000 for it. So you see, when you're buying in the northeast, you think, oh, these properties are so cheap. You know, they're cheap. I'll just rent it straight out. But sometimes there might be something behind it. So bought it for 60 grand. Looked at the pictures, lovely. Looked at the pictures, looked lovely on the pictures. Then he wanted to rent it out, and then somebody referred him to me and went, Debbie, this property is not what I thought it was. Went in, needed a full refurb. The property was only worth 65 all done up. He had a 20 grand refurb to spend on top of the 60 grand plus his 6 grand auction fees. So you can see where we're going. You need somebody to view that property on your behalf if you're not in the northeast, and just go around on obviously FaceTime, go around with you. Get obviously all properties you need to have a survey on them in any way. So he didn't have a survey. I don't know when they read the legal pack, but we bought a lemon, and this is tens of thousands of pounds. So let's keep you safe with auctions. Right, I'm going to go over to Wayne, who's got a very, very short presentation about that. No, so Wayne's on holiday, by the way. Hiya, Wayne.
Hey, hello everyone. Hello everyone. Look, Deb and Lee and I, because I'm on holiday, we haven't had much time to converse, but I prepared something which I'm thinking might well be useful for Lee, me, Deb, just to go through and kind of interject. Guys, I guess if I can't share my screen just yet, Deb.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm not a co-host.
Right, so we need to make you a co-host. So let's have a little look in here. How would I make you a co-host?
There we go. Oh no. Okay, now it's allowing me to do it. Perfect.
Right, great. I must have pressed something right.
I mean, look, I was just going, and I think a bit of this I think is, I think, guys, there's a lot of things that if I was buying a property at auction, I've tried unsuccessfully on multiple occasions, for both the main residence and investment properties, guys. But if I was to do it, what would I do? What sort of finance might be available? How does it work? And these were the kind of points that I thought we would be touching on. I don't know if Deb or Lee want to come into this, or we want to run it in a different process to that it's here. But I guess, I'll come back to, I think Deb's has pretty much explained the auction process there. When you buy a property on a traditional auction, guys, you have 28 working days in a typical auction. And as Lee will tell you, when the gavel goes down, okay, that hammer goes down, you are legally bound to buy that property. I'll skip over this point, guys, in that Lee might want to run over these points at a later point. Lee, do you want to interject at all?
You want to just run through your bits? Because I've got a bit of a haphazard way of sharing my own stuff. So I'll jump in if you want me to, for certain points, but otherwise, crack on.
Perfect. Good man. Okay. So I think, guys, when it comes to financing properties at auction, now, look, DMI, we've been trading for 22 years, and our real speciality has always been assisting property investors. And for 22 years, we've been attending property auctions. Why have we been attending property auctions? Because contrary to popular belief, guys, you can secure both normal mortgages and bridging finance within an auction timescale. The key is, what condition is the property in? Because ultimately, if the property is not in a livable and habitable condition, then, the circumstances are the exact same as it would be on an open market transaction. The property is not eligible for a normal buy-to-let mortgage. So the property must be in a livable and habitable condition in order to secure a normal mortgage. If you do it in the right way, if you're liaising with a broker up front, if we're understanding out about the property, if you've looked at the property, if you've perhaps had a survey of your own on the property, then normal finance can be obtained. But the most important thing is that you ensure that funds are secured. At auctions, as I say, you put your 10% down on the auction. On the day of the auction, you have then a typical time frame, which is 28 days. That's 20 working days, 4 weeks in which to complete. As I say, consider the finance options available: bridging loans, buy-to-let, cash. The 6-month rule, guys, which you might have become accustomed to in the past, where you're told you can't remortgage a property until you've owned it for 6 months. It's fundamentally not the case. You can remortgage a property well inside of the 6 months if you buy it cash, if you buy it on a bridge. The most important thing, though, guys, is knowing your strategy. If it is that the property is livable, but you intend to knock it about a bit, convert it, well, then a buy-to-let's simply not the best option. Even though you could secure a buy-to-let possibly within the time frame, a buy-to-let's not the best option for you, given that fundamentally you're intending to knock the property about. You're not intending to let it straight away, and you're going to refinance it. And leading on to that bottom point, you will incur hefty fees associated with perhaps exiting that buy-to-let mortgage. So, all forms of finance will complete. It's about putting the right strategy in place, getting in contact with a broker right on day one, understanding what finance options are available to you, and then working that in, because of course different finance is going to cost different amounts, and it's all going to impact your ROI. What you're looking at here is the overall picture. One thing impacts another. What you buy it for will impact what the cost of the finance is. The condition of the property will impact the cost of the finance. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think I've put something at the bottom there which I can't see. Wayne,
I'm not being funny. No one can see. No one can see your slides.
You can't see them?
I can't. Can you?
I can.
Can you? Oh,
Yeah.
me, Rob can't.
Oh, you're talking about
I can see them, yeah.
Yeah, I think Deb's talking about the writing's too small. Is that what you're inferring?
No, I literally can't see it.
Oh, okay. And then I guess the kind of main point I would say, guys, with any form of finance, whether it be auction or on the open market, is if you're taking a bridge, focus on that exit. Don't be getting into a bridge on a 6 or 12 or 18-month term without any understanding of the end finance. The most important thing with any form of short-term finance is, what are you going to get onto? How are you going to exit it? And so if securing a bridge for the purchase, ensure you have absolutely considered the exit. That's pretty much it from me, guys. I do have headline rates, which I might come on to later to give you a bit of a flavour of where the market's sitting now. You'll all be pleased and not so surprised, I'm sure, given the kind of recent press that rates are continuing to drop. And since we met last month, pretty much all bar one or two rates headline rates have dropped by some margin from where they were when we met last month. That's pretty much
good news, isn't it? That's good news.
Absolutely.
Good news. And I think with auctions as well, I've been speaking to people, where you've got repossessions from landlords and stuff like that. They're putting a lot in auctions now. I mean, there must be rated in these auction houses, to be honest with you. But anyway, rant over. What we'll do is we'll go over there with Lee and get Lee to talk about contracts. And he's going to show us a real legal pack. And there's a really messy one, isn't there, Lee?
There are actually quite a few, but we'll just stick to one or two for now. Otherwise, you'll be here till midnight. So yeah, I'm gonna touch base. So I'm just trying to find the first one. Touch base with you. I'll share my screen in a second, but I'm gonna go through a contract that we had a client recently who actually secured this by the traditional method. He came to us to do the completion for him. When we actually reported to him on the contract, and the title wasn't so bad on this particular occasion, but the contract was. He decided to take the risk, run the risk, and said, "I'm not buying it. They can sue me," because he wasn't prepared to carry out the transaction to completion because of the amount of fees that were hidden in the contract. So it does happen. I think the biggest thing you can take away from tonight is the little nuggets of advice that we can give to you. But even if you think you've done these time and time again, you're really confident and competent. And I'm not saying that you're not, but just ask questions. Just have someone even if it's briefly look over it, just get some support, because you just don't want to be making these decisions. And like I said, he lost the best part of 10 grand and ran the risk of being sued. I mean, the likelihood of him being sued is probably small because the costs associated with that are really high. But it is possible, and people have been sued as a result. So I've got two contracts to show, very similar to each other, but both have hideous fees attached. So I'm going to kind of quickly run through those with you. I've also got a copy of one of the reports that we've done for a client that is, well, the same property, the one that he aborted on, just to show you what a report that we would produce for you would look like. And then I'm just going to show you briefly what auction packs look like. So when we get the link from a client and we open them, I've got ones that are exceptionally brief, and then you kind of raise the questions as to why is it so brief? Why is there such a lack of information? Is it because the seller doesn't want to tell you something? Is it something wrong with it? Probably, may not be. It's just there's no information to really go by. And then I've done an auction pack review on, I think it was Monday, for another client who, and again, I'll show you the contract or the pack for that. And it's much fuller, much more information to make a commercial decision on. But again, it depends on your risk profile as an investor, whether you would proceed with something like this or whether you're quite risk adverse and just say, you know what, no, I'm not prepared to take it any further. So without further ado, I will also try to share my screen, and let's see if this is successful or not. Share. So ignore the Guinness expert bit here. I'm just going to minimize that, minimize all this nonsense. So the Guinness expert, so Dan Parker is one of my employees. He is the chap that actually looked at this auction pack for the client who I assigned the file to originally. But as you can see instantly from what I'm showing you here, there are 5 documents attached to this. You've got the title, the plan, and the contract. Now, I don't know what risk profile people do adopt here, but to me, red flags are instantly a kind of buzzing everywhere because of how little information that the seller is A, able to provide, and or B, willing to provide. I would expect to see protocol forms in here because there's no reason why a seller can't produce those, especially if they own the property. Bit different if it's an executorship or the deceased property that they're selling. You don't tend to get protocols for that because it's not their property in which they're selling and they might not have the information. Sometimes you can argue that they do because it's the children, but you don't argue on them sorts of things. You know, you have to do your due diligence as investors as well. And obviously Rob will touch more on the survey side of things later on. So in terms of the contract that I've got here, can you all see that? Does that all, can everyone see it?
Share the next screen.
Share the next screen. What can you see?
Just the email still.
This email here?
But from Dan Parker with the 5 things on it.
Oh God. And here it goes horribly wrong. Okay, let me do. Can you see that now?
No.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the contract to the pack that I've just shown you. So as you can see, as I'm scrolling up, it's rather long. I can't see if we've got any pages here, but there's numerous copious amounts of pages here. So I've made some notes on mine, so I'm just going to highlight them and I'll circle them with my mouse as we go down. One big, huge bit of advice when you are bidding at auction, make sure that the entity in which you're purchasing it under or your names are correct. The reason I say that is because if you put down, I'm Lee Gilder and I'm going to buy this property, but I actually want it in LG Limited, to have the seller's solicitors change that, it's technically needs to be done by deed and they will charge you an arm, leg and a kidney to do it. And I've had this all too often where you end up spending another £300-400 in legal fees just for them to put a one-side piece of paper together to say that they agree for the new entity. So it is really important to get that correct at the very start.
The correct name.
Yeah, correct name. So just make sure that that is the case when you're doing it, because like I said, you can change it. Well, they don't have to change it because the contracts will say that it's between the parties that have agreed. So if they said no, then you're stuck like that, and that could really hinder your reasoning as to why you wanted it in a limited company or otherwise. Again, so I'm going to go down here. So you can see here 5 to 7. I'm going to just briefly touch on these and you can read if you can, but I'm going to try and whiz through because I don't want to bore you all to death. But these ones here are more to do with the buyer, and the onus is massively placed on a buyer at any auction. That's to do with having checked it yourself. They pass the buck to everything. Whether you have or you haven't, it's irrelevant. You're by signing up to this particular one because it was traditional method, you are confirming that you've done all of that, whether you have or you haven't. So if anything goes horribly wrong after the event, you've got absolutely no recourse against the seller because you didn't do X, Y, or Z. So the biggest thing that, again, Rob will touch on this, is a survey. You really, really should be getting a survey because it could be about to fall down. And sometimes it doesn't look like it is, but underneath it all, it's not great. On this particular one, they're selling with limited title guarantee. Now, I don't understand why. I mean, this technically is just in relation to knowledge, really. It wasn't the only time I would ever expect to see limited title guarantee is if the seller themselves are not the legal proprietors. So that would be usually an executorship sale. They don't have knowledge of the property. They can't give full title guarantee because they're not the legal owners. So that's where limited comes in. In this particular instance, they were. So they're just trying to get out of a lot of things here by putting it as limited. But they shouldn't be, essentially. So I'm just going to flick through mine. So let's go down to clause 15. Here where some of the fees start. So you'll see here and the difference. So this touches based on what Debbie was saying before. We start with numbers here. So it's fine. It stands out. You can see numbers. It says plus VAT. Fine. You can see here £100 per day. We're starting to get a feel that fees and figures are coming into this now. So that's an additional fee to notice. So if notice is served on you, so you agree to a 28-day exchange on the gavel with the 28 days. If you get to the 28 days and for whatever reason you can't complete, they're going to charge you £150 plus VAT for the privilege of sending you a sheet of paper. So that's fee number one. Then they'll start to charge you £100 per day as well, which is quite onerous and not usual in a contract. This is quite a unique one I'm showing you here, and you probably, as I move on, you'll see why the client said, "Stuff it, I'm not buying this anymore." So we move down to clause 20. Now this is the biggest one here. You see they've put 20% in words, so you're not necessarily going to read that because this is a very long contract, very waffly, loads of legalese that nobody understands. Half the time, sometimes we read things and go, what on earth does that even mean? Because it's just waffle. But here they're charging the buyer 20% of the purchase price for the seller's costs. Now, I want you to kind of keep that seller's cost in your mind here, because as we go through, you'll see a lot of that term. And I don't know what, I mean, I would love to be charging these kind of fees because I would only need a month and I'd be making goodness knows how much money. It's just crazy, this particular contract. So there's 20%. So there's a hefty cost already. I think this purchase price was 50. So 20% of that, I think my maths is correct. Is that £10,000? Yeah, good. You know, we're on in maths is not my strongest suit usually. So there's 10 grand already. And then we're going to move down. So that's the 20% one. So I'm just looking at my copy here as well. So 24. Here we go again. So the buyer will be responsible for the seller's fee. So there's another fee and expenses of £9,995. Again, it's written in words, not figures. So again, you're going to have read that first one and gone, oh God, here we go. Start reading some more because they don't put all the figures clause after clause after clause because that would be helpful, easy, and nice of them to do it. So solicitors will just muddle it all in together in a 10-page contract, and it starts to get, as you can imagine, confusing for people. So there's £19,995 already. Clause 25. There's some more seller's solicitors fees here of another £900 plus VAT. So now we're tipping over the £20,000 mark in fees. Bearing in mind this is a £50,000 purchase, which I don't know about people's figures and how you make your figures, but this is now gone bonkers, quite frankly. Let me just go down my notes because I had to quickly look through this before. There's just more kind of waffle here about putting the onus on the buyer. It's saying things like if there is a tenant, you're buying it subject to that, whether or not there is, which is why it is really crucial that you have a team of people like Debbie and her team that will actually go and view it for you, because you get squatters, you get people that move into these things, and they'll just pass the buck straight away over to a buyer. Moving down, so that touches base on 37. Sorry, I'm gonna kind of blast through all this. Keep going. So number 50 here. There's some more fees here. So this is in terms of if you don't complete in time, there's going to be some liquidated damages here. But this one's conveniently in numbers, not words. So we're all then reverting back to playing the confusing mind games again, which is not helpful when you're trying to go through this. Obviously, we would go through this, and I'll show you the report based on the really important clauses shortly. Where else are we? And then kind of there's another fee here, but that's to do with exchange of contracts. So that's normal deposit, sorry. So that's fine in terms of what that is. And then right at the very end, it slaps you with the seller or their agents. You can't respond to any pre-contract or any general inquiries, no inquiries whatsoever. Don't ask anything. Don't do anything. You can't do anything. You know, heaven forbid you breathe, because that will cost probably another 10 grand. But as you can see, it's really, really onerous. And on this particular occasion, as I said at the start, the client said, stuff this, I'll take the chance of getting sued, because he said this is no longer anyway a viable deal at all. And he lost his initial deposit. So I think he lost over 10 grand. But that's half the cost of what he was going to lose if he went through with this, because he would never get that money back. Because it just didn't work at all. So that's issue number one, well, contract number one. I'm going to show you another hideous contract. So just bear with me while I try and do this, because
that's an eye opener, that lately. Do you know what it is, though? The crooks. Who's ever put these contracts? How can they get away with doing that to people? Like, it's an absolute crap. Like,
it is. It's just, it's not. I don't know, understand how they can do it, quite frankly. it's concerning. And like I say, for solicitors as well that are drafting this. So when I am preparing an auction pack for an individual, my instant kind of sorry, I'm just trying to share this screen. I do apologize, everyone.
But I mean,
Um,
surely, like every profession, there's got to be some like there's got to be some sort of lanes that you can't cross. Do you know what I mean? I mean, as a landlord, like the stuff we can't do, we're getting shot down all the time and stuff like that. It's just like honestly, that just should not be allowed.
it shouldn't, I mean, because I always start with the emphasis of, I say to my client, are you happy to pay my fee? And they usually go, oh, of course, yes, that's fine. So I said, well, don't put that onus on the buyer then. Are you happy to pay whatever it fee? Because if you think about it, if you're going to sell it on the open market, you're going to have estate agent fees. So some of the fees that you sell through auction should be borne by the seller because you would be having those fees anyway. The minute you start to put these sorts of fees and figures in, you're really reducing your pool of purchasers.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not what we're
for
buying.
people looking to buy it.
Mm.
So I'm just going to see if I can share this one. Can you see that one?
Mm. Yes, it's small, but we can see it.
Yeah. So again, this is another example. This is just a copy of it. So it's small writing. So we're already starting off on a kind of let's wince at the screen. Can we read what it says?
Yeah,
So on
deliberately.
this particular one, this is just again all the gump at the front saying, look, if the lot's squatted, if it's unlawfully occupied, not my problem, your problem. You're buying sold to the incumbents on the title, which is common, but you can't raise any queries in relation to it. William v. Sandals, that's a case that occurred quite some time ago now, but it puts the onus on the seller. So that's basically the solicitors excusing themselves from any liability because they won't have checked the replies. So if your client says to you, there's no Japanese knotweed, but you know that there is Japanese knotweed, that case basically was saying that I'm not going to take any responsibility. I have not checked the validity of the replies I'm being told. You do have an obligation to make people aware. If you know something to be false, you can't just go along with a lie. But that's basically what that is. So we start here. So the first one on this particular case, I want to point out the interest rate. So on a contract of a standard condition of sale contract, if you were to buy this or sell it on an open market with a normal contract, and let's use the term normal, you usually expect 4% above the base rate of whatever bank in which usually the bank's linked to the law firm's bank. And if they don't put it there, it's the law society's base rate from time to time. You'll see here, that's 10%. So if notice to complete is served and time is made of the essence, that's the figure that is used to work out what interest is being paid. And based upon whatever the purchase price is, what the deposit that you put down, that can rack up into several thousands of pounds quite fast. So they've obviously amended that here. So that's one to look out for. If you go down 22 and 23, again, it's putting all the obligations on the buyer again here. The buyer will have deemed themselves to have done their own inspections, whether you've done or not. You've checked the tenure, all aspects of the property. It's very generic, but it's everything. Buyer's problem, your fault. If you haven't looked, tough. And that's basically what this is all saying. And then we go down to number 37. We start to see again the liquidated damages one here. It's a very similar contract, but slightly different. And the £500 that's put here. Go down. Number 40, the buyer shall pay an additional 10% of the purchase price. That's just for some other costs. And usually you don't get an invoice. There's no explanation as to what other costs are. It's just costs. Could be anything. Usually it's a load of nothingness. But that's what the contract says. Moving down, I think there's more on this one if we move down. So again, 43 is in relation to the deposit, which is normal. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. You've got some seller solicitors fees here, £800 plus VAT, and it's payable on completion. And this one specifically says no breakdown or invoice will be provided, and you can't raise any queries in relation to it. So that instantly makes me think, why on earth can't I have an invoice? And if you're paying somebody's fees, you'd want something to confirm what that fee is in relation to, but you can't. Going down a bit more, oh look, there's another £3,000 here. So I'm just trying to emphasize here that it can turn from what you think is, if you're doing this for the first time, second time, third time. I've done my first one at auction and it was quite an exciting thing to do. But that can easily be swallowed up in I've got this really great deal. The figures stack up immensely, fantastic. However, that can turn very fast when you start looking through the ins and outs of contracts like this. So do get it checked. And this is not a case of do it yourself. I'm giving you all the tips here. I'm trying to help you look for things yourself so you can get an indication in your own merit as to whether you would even get a solicitor to check it at this point. Because obviously if you start seeing all this, you might just instantly go, this isn't worth it. There's no point. I'm not going to waste a couple of £100 on the solicitor to tell me the same thing that I can quite clearly see here. You might not understand it, but you probably all on this call deal with figures far more than I will. So you know what deals work, how they stack, how you look at the figures, what you're looking for. So you can make these kind of commercial decisions before you even get that far.
Mm.
So it is really important to kind of get that looked at. What I'll do now is if I can get this done. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So this is a report that we did for the Foley Street, which is the first contract we did. And this is what we would kind of look to do for you if you instructed us. So Debbie mentioned before, there's different levels of what we would check for you. For some of my existing clients, I've got really good relationships with, and all of my clients are treated as like my friends because I want them to be able to call me and go, Lee, what the bloody hell's happening? Can we look at this? Can you sort this out for me? So we can kind of do a more informal one, but that's on the basis of like a bit of an email breakdown, have a quick look at it. Unfortunately, they're never turning to be a quick look at anything because I can't just do quick. I like to be thorough. But on a more formal basis, if you want to have more formal reports, and this is what it looks like. So this is the one that Daniel did. Obviously, I check everything that goes out the office anyway because I'm really anal about stuff like this and I like to make sure it's all good. So there's obviously contents here. And we talk about the report, so we make sure we reference it's an auction property. And what we're basically advising on and kind of informing you on is the auction pack itself. Now, sometimes we will go into a bit more depth and kind of say, this doesn't have X, Y, and Z in it, and we would expect to see that. So you should be making these, 1, 2, 3 inquiries. On this particular one, there was no searches. Well, it's nuts to not do searches really, but sometimes your time constraints are such that you can't do them. But that's why it's good having someone like Michelle. So if you've ever met Michelle Poller, she has Property Search Northeast. You can order your own searches yourself. It doesn't have to be a solicitor. So you can, if you're looking at something and you're willing, again, it's all cost. Some people have a risk profile that's quite small and a couple of costs here and there, they'll just do it or they'll just say, I don't need to. I've heard all the time, I've got a property down the road, it will be fine. But you have to remember the searches are specific to that property and there could be land charges, there could be all sorts on there that you really should be looking at, especially on deceased properties, for example, if there's stand stair lifts in there, if the whole front of the property's been modified for access, that usually costs, and they normally put things like that on a land charge on a local search. So you need to be having these things checked to make sure that you're not going to be stuck with a 10 grand bill. From the land charges, the local authority to pay that off, because these sorts of charges attach to the property, not the person in which obtained the finance or obtained the work. So I'm waffling now. We go through tenure, we look at the contract terms, we explain a lot of the contract terms, and this is where we started to tell the client all these fees that you're going to have to look at here and kind of setting them out here to it's quite clear, much clearer than the contract itself. And that's what we're trying to do here, is trying to give you something that's quite easy to read, hopefully to understand. Obviously, we're always on standby to kind of go through things verbally if you need to. We kind of explain what caveat emptor is, and this is a massive, massive thing for property, because that in English means buyer beware. You'll have probably heard the term before, but it's true that as a purchaser, the onus is entirely on you to do your due diligence, not for the seller to tell you something's wrong. Now there can't be any misrepresentation, there can't be anything like that because you can sue for that. But they're not obliged to tell you anything. And that's why your searches, your surveys, your visual inspections, your everything that you can do on a property is vitally important, because there's nobody to point the finger at when something happens other than yourself if you're not doing this in each transaction that you're doing. Again, potentially on the deal, the property, you could be well versed in it, and some of this isn't relevant, and that's fine, because that's your risk that you take. And it might not be a risk in the strong sense of the term risk, but you're making informed decisions. We talk about delay completion and what that means. Obviously, we explain what limited title guarantee here is to the client, so you can understand it. There are indemnity policies you can get. They're really not worth the paper they're written on, but we put it in there because some people, again, are quite risk adverse, and that little comfort blanket of a indemnity policy makes people feel better. And it's fine, but with any indemnity policy, it's an insurance. The insurer is always going to start off with, how do I not pay out on this? And work back from that. So sometimes they are worth their weight in gold because there's no way around this particular problem, but sometimes they're just created for pointless reasons. We talk about deposit, exchange of contracts, completion. We talk about a chain. So there's more information we put in that if there was a chain involvement here, so a chain of transactions. So your seller selling to you, you're actually selling something on, and so on and so forth. We talk about the kind of definitions here. We move on to the title. We talk about the title, if there's anything particularly to draw your attention to. We talk about indemnity policies, pre-contract inquiries. Obviously, we tell you here that we are unable to raise any because you've exchanged. It's kind of at this point tough luck. And we kind of go through all the little bits and bobs here. And then there's a big section about indemnity insurance and what it means for an indemnity, so a bit more of an explanation as to what I've just waffled on there for you. And then we conclude. We talk about the property prevention. So as property investors, this would be a very good thing for you all to do with the land registry, which means anytime somebody touches your property at land registry, you are notified. So generally speaking, there shouldn't be anything that goes on that property, especially if it's unencumbered, because that's what fraudsters go after. Unencumbered, don't live there. And you don't want to end up one day and go to sell something that you actually find out you don't own. And there is cases of this. And that's pretty much from a report perspective. I'm just going to really show you if I can. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
This is one I've done recently on Monday, so it's very, very recent. The clients actually purchased this now at auction, traditional, because the advice we gave was like, it's fine. He's quite fortunate that it's a South Tyneside lease. So I know Andrew West is on here. He's becoming quite well versed in South, North, East, West Tyneside leases. But this is a South Tyneside lease. So this is the one where you have the freehold of the whole building subject to the lease of one of the flats. And that one lease governs both flats, which is why you don't end up in a freehold flat scenario and it's being unmortgageable. But you can see the difference here. If I just scroll, the level of information that's provided on this particular pack versus the one I showed you before that had 4 documents. This is what you should be looking for. You do want to see searches. You can see they have started putting searches in here: coal, water and drainage. There definitely is a local in here as well somewhere. This one was fine. I mean, there's a short lease on it, but he actually is the freehold owner as well. So on this particular one, he's just bought the downstairs. He now owns the whole lot, and he's going to do a lease extension for himself, and then probably either sell it on, or at least that particular issue is remedied. But it was pretty much fine, this particular one. I don't think there was anything. I'm just trying to look at my email. The only thing on that particular contract is that they reduced the notice to complete time from 10 days to 5. So if he isn't able to complete for whatever reason, he will only have 5 working days to get it completed if notice is served, as opposed to the standard 10 that you get under any standard conditions of sale. So that could stick him a little bit, but he's cash. He bought it for really low value. It's obviously worth way more to him than it would be to maybe somebody else because he owns the freehold. And on that particular one, it was fine because as Debbie said before, there are auction properties out there that aren't bad. My very first auction, my very first buy-to-let that I bought in March this year, was purchased at auction. And for my strategy, it was, I read the situation. So I think Wayne was going to touch briefs on this because there's actually program software that you can have that can tell you the history of a property. It had gone to auction and it was on the open market, didn't sell. Went to auction once, didn't sell. We then put our bid in, and it was on for a minimum of 100,000. So we offered 100 on the basis of all the fees. So we did a fee flip. All the fees were covered by the seller because it didn't make the deal work if I had to pay 6 grand for this and a grand for this and this, that, and the other. They initially were like, we're not sure. I think we're going to put it back to auction. So I said, go for it. You know, I've done this job for a long time. I mean, obviously, I'm a solicitor, but you know, when you get stuck into these auctions, you do lose sight a little bit. And it didn't sell again. And then they came crawling back and said, we'll accept your offer. I knew the seller wanted to sell that property far more than I wanted to buy it because they needed the funds for another venture. I think she needed some kind of alterations to another property she had to live in it because she needed a support in the living environment. She bought the property for £21,000 in 1980 something under the right to buy legislation. So she's definitely made a good chunk on it. And she came back and we bought it, and it's probably worth. We've upgraded it because it was quite ugly. And it's probably worth about 145 now, and we probably spent about 15 grand on it. So there are good deals out there. You just got to find them and have the team around you to support your decision-making process. And I think I've covered everything I wanted to. And sorry for waffling on for so long.
No, there was no waffle on there. That was like, my God, honestly, we needed that. So has everybody got like really, really good information out of that, and they know what to do when looking at a legal pack? Yeah, it's been really good, hasn't it? That's been absolutely amazing. So there is actually I know Wayne's put on AIG. I'm trying to negotiate a discount for everybody because I have this. It's a system, isn't it, Wayne, where they can check everything.
Exactly that. I mean, look, I don't use it, but I know David Sandeman, the director. I think, as I say, it's been there for. I think they've got data from almost all auctions. They run the system that the auctioneers' platforms go through. So, especially with auctions going online now, EI Group runs the systems that you bid on. Now, historically, they didn't run that. That's just kind of a thing now post-COVID because most auctions have gone online. But they've had details of every single lot, or 90% of every single auction lot for the last 20, 25 years. So you'll see, like Lee says, well, hang on, there might be something in this. Why has it gone to auction once and twice? And it went to this auction in the Northeast, and now it's going to this auction in the Northeast, and so on and so forth. And you can build up a picture which you might not be able to see just from finding it on Rightmove or just scrolling through the auction catalogue. You really want to build up the backstory on the properties. And to my mind, if you're into buying properties at auction, it's a useful tool. I don't think it's particularly cheap. I'm sure it's not, but I'm sure Debs will work her magic and get us all. You said 50% off, didn't you, Debs?
Well, that's what I'm trying for. You're telling me it's a little bit tight, but you know what I mean? I'll just keep pushing and it gives in. That's what we used to do. So yeah, we'll keep pushing and it gives in. Yeah, so that was absolutely fantastic. And what I'll do is I'll put my Zoom link on there. If anybody's thinking about buying a property at auction, before you look at the legal pack, or you want to talk about how auction properties work, book in a Zoom. Let's have a chat about your strategy and how it's going to work. And then obviously, we've got the power teams as well, so we can get in touch with Lee. He's really friendly. He's not grumpy. He's a lovely, lovely solicitor, so Lee. And you've got Wayne as well, who's loads of fun. And yeah, he's not a grumpy finance guy. So all like to have fun, but we're really, really knowledgeable, and we really, really want to help investors, especially in today's market, buy the right deals, because there's a lot of people that are not buying the right deals. Now we'll get our amazing Rob on. So Rob's going to just tell us physically what he looks at a property if it's an auction, and tells us what he does. So Rob buys at auction. That's his strategy. So Rob, are you there? Rob? Is anybody? I must. Oh,
can you hear me now?
God, I thought everybody had disappeared.
No, it's It's just me, right? And as I haven't got Shirley here, as people will soon get to know, computers and me don't go together. So I've got an idiot's guide that Shirley's written out for me to get into this here. So she says I need permission to share my screen, Debbie.
Yes, I will give you permission to share your screen. I've got multiple participants to share screen, so I've said yes. Is that right?
Right.
And then you just press share, I think.
Oh, hang on a minute. Just hold your horses.
Hold your horses. It's a little Geordie saying, everybody hold your horses. That means you just got to wait a little bit. But that was fantastic, wasn't it? So we're all know now we could just download some legal packs from Pattinson's and have a look through or whatever the auction house and have a little look through and see what you can spot. Right, yes, we can see a slide.
Can you?
Yes, we can see a nice colourful one.
Well, all right. Well, I can it. Hang on a minute.
Bloody technology, isn't it?
Oh, man.
Well, we've just got to get with it though, haven't we? I remember when I left school, computers were just coming in. I thought, do you know what it is? I'm so glad that I don't have to use or not thinking later on in my profession or your job, you have to use computer.
I used to be a real whiz kid with it, and now I can barely turn the damn things on and off.
No,
I'll just pipe in, Debs, while getting some gremlins in the system there. Just Lee touched upon leases and so forth there. I think going forward, that would be an excellent chat to have, just to get his knowledge on one of these chats. Because like I said, the difference, the nuance, and it can be really complicated, especially when you look at the auction side of things. I would advise anyone listening here, if you are buying auction, whether you lose Lee or whoever, use someone local. Because there's some very qualified solicitors out there throughout the country who still don't understand leases. And when you've got a 28-day, even a 14-day completion, it can be expensive and stressful. But yeah, I'd love to see Lee do another chat, just get into the real
nitty-gritty of the leases.
Be good for everyone, yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, we can do that. That is no problem. And I'm sure everybody else would want that as well. So yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for suggesting that. Right, Rob, do you want to, what's the next step now? So we can see that you've got your face on here.
I've got my face on there saying Rob Harrison identifying property defects. Yeah? Yep. Right. Okay. I'm off and running. So good evening anyway. Those what you've said so far has been fascinating. I've really enjoyed listening to that.
It's been brilliant.
Even though I buy at auction all the time, I must have bought, I don't know, over 20 properties at auction in the last 5 or 6 years. And even some of that I'm listening to there is invaluable to me. Moving on.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I was just going to say as well, I can see a number of people that are on here that I already know, but I can see the vast majority I don't know actually. So for those of you out there who don't know who I am, as I say, my name's Rob Harrison, property investor like the rest of us, and I'm a student of houses, if you like. I'm really interested on how they're put together and how and why they deteriorate. So when Debbie asked me to put something together for tonight, and when she told me the subject matter would be auctions, and could I then talk about a few things that people should look out for, possible red flags, and perhaps a few things that sellers might try to hide before putting their house into auction, which believe me happens. And I say I buy at auctions all the time, and I'll be honest, I could talk for 5 hours now on this subject. Unfortunately, I've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes, something like that. Okay, so I was thinking if I can just give you one thing that you can take away tonight that will stand you in good stead, for the future. That'll stop you, as Debbie says, stop you buying lemon. And I've just thought about something that's it's instantly recognizable. It's a massive red flag in my eyes, and you'll see it regularly on your viewings. And you probably won't even never have given it a second thought. and it's a cement rendered wall. Okay. So this picture here, what you've got here, you can see all the other houses are brick, and this one's been rendered. So let's just take a hypothetical scenario. So sometime in the past, so we have a homeowner who lives in a house like this. This one's got solid walls. It could be solid brick, it could be stone, but there's a problem with damp on the internal walls. And in my experience, it's more likely condensation. But anyway, the homeowner employs a builder to sort the problem out, who identifies penetrating damp, maybe it's from rainwater driving against the external wall. Then the builder recommends a cement render over the offending wall there, so that no more rain can penetrate the brickwork. Yep, job done. However, some builders are more knowledgeable than others, should I say? And in this particular instance, this action taken can honestly cause repercussions for years, decades to come. And I'm going to go through an example next that I came across when I was doing a house survey for a property investor. Excuse me, I've got a sore throat and I've got a cold. I've just come back from holiday, and I'm not very well at the moment, so just bear with us if my voice starts going. Anyway, I was going to say that, so if when you're viewing houses, and the one that you're going to see is the only one, or one of only a few in the street that have been rendered, then pay particular attention to the inside of that rendered wall, because I can pretty much guarantee that there'll be damp on the internal walls. Okay, then this is the house I came across on the survey. So what would your first impressions be if you pulled up to this house, view this house? You might think it looks quite neat and tidy. Looks quite well looked after, well maintained. Now, is this typical of how everyone views a house now? And how many of you give the outside not much more than a glance, because you want to get inside and you want to see the size of the bedrooms, whether you need to fit a new bathroom, what state the kitchen's in. But how many people would, for example, notice the missing slates up beside the ridge, which is letting in water, which actually isn't even what I'm here to talk about tonight. But would you also know that the front wall is suffering from sulfate attack, and that the house inside there has penetrating damp, possibly due to incorrect injected cavity wall insulation? Or how about that it's got wall tie failure, or that there's no lintels above the windows? And I might add, I don't own this house, and I've never even been inside of it. I actually turned up to view the house next door with the stone effect tiles, but this one just fascinated me. But what I do, especially when I'm looking through an auction site, through a catalogue online, what I do, or I always do, if I'm interested in one, I check the house out on Street View, just to see if I can pick out any clues of anything going on, because Street View might be 2, 3, 4 years old, and things change in a house in that time. So I always check out Street View. And when I did anyway, the rest of the street was red brick. These were the only two houses that in this street that weren't. And one had stone cladding, which is the one on the right-hand side there, and the other one was rendered. Now, this is already screaming out to me that there's penetrating damp and possibly condensation. Unfortunately, As I say, I've only got 5 or 10 minutes. I haven't got time to explain why in detail. That's a whole subject of its own. But there's only a few reasons why you would render or clad a brick built house. I mean, it's expensive to do. Why would you do it? And penetrating damp and possibly condensation because they don't know what people are doing are the main ones, as I mentioned on the last slide there. Now, this is the same house coming up that I saw on Street View. And I took a screenshot of it. Right, where that circle is there, this crazed cracking effect
Wow.
is called something called sulfate attack on the cement render. Now, this cracking effect like that, this only happens if the wall behind the render is soaking wet. So it's pretty much certain you've got penetrating damp here. Again, as I said, this is a whole subject of its own of how rainwater is literally sucked through the surface of the render, through those cracks or tiny cracks into the building, and then the water is trapped inside that wall. It cannot evaporate. Cement doesn't let it evaporate, and it causes all sorts of damage inside. And then these, where the arrows are pointing to, these are cavity wall insulation injection holes. Now, there are different types of cavity wall insulation. Some keep your house warm, and some keep your house wet. Although some can cause penetrating damp in some houses and not in other houses. In fact, different types of cavity wall insulation can cause penetrating damp just on certain walls in any particular house and not on other walls. But again, that's for another day. That's for another day. It's quite a big subject. Now, these horizontal cracks there are the result of cavity wall tie failure. Now, the rusting metal wall tie is expanding and opening up those cracks, and they're rusting because the wall's soaking, and it's because it's trapped. The water's trapped behind that render. And that diagonal cracking above the window there is the result of steel lintels not being fitted above the window frame when the timber windows were removed and these new PVC windows were installed. Again, that's a subject for another time. So, in fact, regarding the cracking on the render of this house, there are actually 3 completely different reasons for it. But I was alerted to all of this by checking on Street View. That's before I visited the house, because as I say, when I got there, the wall had been painted, which had covered up a lot of the telltale signs. So be careful. Just be careful if you're viewing a house at auction that's been rendered or recently painted. Because as I said, often the sellers, if they can't sell the house on the open market, they'll do something. They'll try and hide something and stick it into an auction.
Yeah.
So always ask yourself, why is something being done? As I said, but I've already identified 5 defects on this house, and we haven't even been inside of it. So
it's crazy, isn't it? I know that is like being a detective, isn't it? But just shows you what you can look. There's no guttering at the top neither, is there? I can't see any guttering at the top there.
I can't see it on this. They may
No.
not. Yeah, I'm not sure.
But
so anyway, it's gone from this to this with a coat of paint. Okay, so it's just making the house look nice and neat and tidy. I mean, you know, oh, and by the way, and paint is plastic. It may say it's breathable on the tin, but believe me, it isn't. Okay, and I could explain why and how the manufacturers get away with it. But again, I haven't got time at the minute. But it doesn't do exactly what it says on the tin. Okay.
It's not
So
Ron Steel.
well, that's one of the manufacturers.
Oh, I'm a
And,
little naughties.
like just like cement render, paint, because it's plastic, prevents a house to breathe. It traps moisture in the house wall. So again, if you come across a painted house, even if it hasn't been rendered with cement, there's a fair chance that there'll be internal damp problems.
Yeah, I mean that is so important, and because like we're all rushing, don't we? But I used to think, oh, kitchen, bathroom, new heating system, 20 grand, come out, not even looking at wall ties, guttering. Like Rob's taught us so much over the years. I've known Rob and Shirley long time. It's like, my God, and these are all the problems that can have a big impact after you refurb on the inside, that you have to know the structure on the outside of the property. So this is very, very, it's brilliant,
Yeah, I
absolutely
mean,
brilliant.
as I said, I could keep on talking and talking, but I just wanted to bring one thing, and that is a render,
Yeah,
So, and anyway, and you know what it is? It seems a lot of negative going on here, which is that like showing, red flags here. Watch this, watch that, watch that. But there are bargains to be had at auction.
yeah.
As I say, I buy virtually all of mine that way. Um, as I said, but there are dangers, as I said, as Lee's just said there. They might be hidden in the legal pack, but they might be hidden within the walls themselves as well. So all I would say is, please do your due diligence. Always get a solicitor or a conveyancer to read the legal pack. And another thing is, never ever buy without viewing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been asked on a number of occasions to survey houses with issues, after it was bought at auction without viewing,
Yeah.
and the reasons that have been like, because the buyer lived too far away, and at that price, it just had to be a bargain. But
Yeah.
as the saying goes, if it seems too good to be true, then it probably is.
Yeah, and people don't
Um,
get, a lot of people do not get surveys on properties because they go, oh, it's 400 quid, but you're buying a property for 50, 60, 70,000. You
But
have
just
to
just
weigh
look
it
at the
up.
property yourself. Even if you don't get a survey, just look at the property yourself.
Yeah. I,
Um,
I think as
what
well, when all the things that you said, Rob, and even Lee, like, spotting them things, I think there's opportunities there to go back and negotiate the price, or if it's going to cost too much, or let them know your knowledge to say, do you know what it is? It's going to cost this, it's going to cost this, I'm going to have to do this. And that can be like a little negotiation tool for you to get the price down if it still works after, obviously, the structural work.
that's I've used that before auction as well. When I've gone to a house and I can see there's cracks there and what have you, and I'm looking around the garden, I've seen there's a massive tree being chopped down and they've tried to hide the roots. And I'm saying it's causing problems. So I've gone back to the auction house and said, that, do you realize what's going on here? And they don't know. And then I can negotiate out of auction even.
Yeah. So you can use it
Because
to,
the seller knows.
yeah.
But anyway, so all I want to say is, please don't let this presentation put you off buying auctions,
No.
because it can be a quick and a simple way to buy a house.
Yeah, well, just
Um,
make people aware, keep you safe, make you aware of when you're buying at auction as a strategy. So yes, still look at auctions. I bought stuff at auctions. Jamie Joby's just bought something at auction. I think he got Lee to look at his auction pack. So there's still deals out there. Just be aware and don't buy a lemon. And just think about, pay that couple of £100 for a survey, or I don't know whether Rob goes out now and checks properties, obviously he charges, but we can get in touch with Rob. Rob, have you got I know you're golfing and sunning it up a lot of the time, so I don't know if you're going to be available, but yeah, you've got the network, you've got us, and if you like this presentation, please share it or like it, and put comments on social media. We need to help investors. It's free. You know, we've got Wayne doesn't miss one, Lee, and then now we've got Rob. So please share it for people to have free information about property. Okie dokies. Now I think that's about it.
I was just going to
think
say
we've
one
done
other
bad.
thing. I was just going to say one other thing, Debbie. I don't know if you're going to continue with auction houses and what have you. I was just going to think about how about I view one or two auction houses each month, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We could keep it.
I can just report back showing what I found. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Because you'll
so
probably
we've
be
actually
looking
got
for
some.
yourself.
So we've actually got some live cases or almost live cases.
Yeah, yeah. I think, as you say, I think we need to dig deeper into this strategy because a lot of properties are going to auction because auction houses make good money and people, it's just quicker for vendors, and anybody who's getting repossessed or whatever, they need to be looking like they're getting the best offer and getting it out there. So I think, yeah, let's start putting something together on auctions if
There's
everybody like,
strategies on it as well. So
yeah,
you've got like people buy executorship, like deceased properties, deceased people's houses, and as long as you're looking to flip that house, there's stamp duty exemptions. You can save money on the kind of that sort of side of it. So that I have clients that are kind of, I don't want to say taught, but kind of opened their eyes to some of these exemptions, and they're like, oh well, if I can not pay the stamp duty there and then that's saving itself because there's all rules and I won't waste time going about it now, but it is a specific strategy that people adopt.
yeah, yeah. So we could deep dive into some stuff like that, like the golden nuggets, and obviously with Rob viewing property. So let's have a little think what we're going to do next month, and maybe we do look at the lease side. Get Rob to view a couple of properties on what he would look with a video going through them, and then look at probate properties at auction or probate properties. We could look at that, yeah. So that been absolutely fantastic as usual. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Rob. Thank you to everybody who comes on this Zoom because it's all for you to give you knowledge and you're sorting it all up. My Zoom link's on there. If you need a chat, a free 20 minutes, just on strategy or anything else. If you've bought a property, you're not sure on what to do with it or whatever, we've got Rob, we've got Wayne, we've got Lee. Just reach out and you know, we can help you. Okie dokie. So thanks very much, everybody. Have an amazing evening and I'll see you next month. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye everyone, bye.
Bye. Should put some music on at the end while everybody's going out the room. Bye bye. That was absolutely fantastic. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.